commercial airports that you can fly into with commercial flights. O'Hare is the big one, and then Midway is the smaller of the two airports. So Midway is primarily serviced by Southwest Airlines. They have most of the gates. So if Southwest flies from Philadelphia to Chicago, and I think they do, you have the option of two different airports to choose from. So just real briefly, they're about the same distance away from downtown. Midway's slightly closer. They both can have a lot of traffic. O'Hare traffic from O'Hare to downtown is usually a little bit busier than Midway. They're both serviced by public transportation, so you can get on the L at both airports, at either airport, I guess is a better way of saying it, and get the L, the public transportation system, right into the heart of the city. So a few facts, a little fun facts. So up here on the top left picture is O'Hare, a big monster of an airport. It's got 8 runways. Midway has 5 runways. And that's a picture of the Midway runways are at the bottom right. But the big thing, as you can see, even though the runways sound almost the same, there are 83 million passengers that land in O'Hare on a typical year versus 20 million that land at Midway. So even though the runways don't seem like that much more, you can see the lot of runways, a lot bigger runways than there are at Midway. So, over 4 times as many people fly into O'Hare versus Midway. So just giving you the option. But again, if Southwest flies into Midway, you might want to look at that as an option. And then once you actually land, the CTA, the Chicago Transit Authority, just compare that to ride shares. Ride shares, we talk, that means like Uber or Lyft or taxis. So which one's best for you? It depends on a lot of different things. I'm just going to give you some thoughts about it. Depends if you're in a large group or a small group. If you're in a large group, if you want to get on the CTA, get on the bus or the trains, every person pays a fare, which is it's $2.25 or $2.50, depending on whether you get it on the bus or the L. So if you have a large group, if you're traveling a family of 6, a lot of times it's going to be easier just to get into an Uber or a Lyft or a taxi because they don't charge so much extra per person. But if you're a group of 2 people traveling, a lot of times getting on public transportation may be more economical. Once you're in the city, the main tourist area, and it all depends on what you're going to do, but the main tourist area, if you don't have family or friends in the area you're going to visit, the main tourist area really runs about 2 miles north and south, very close to Michigan Avenue. So the good news about that, the buses that run north and south are a lot easier and run more frequently than the buses that run east and west in Chicago. So if you're in the main tourist area and do feel you want to take a bus versus walking, and we'll talk about some other alternatives later, I would strongly consider the CTA. And the bus drivers in the main tourist area, the bus drivers know there are a lot of tourists, even though a lot of people locals that are taking the bus in this area also going to work or, going shopping ourselves from a local standpoint. I would say 95% of the bus drivers that are in the tourist area are very friendly. They get the questions regularly. If this bus goes somewhere, is this bus, which bus do I take if it's not this one? And almost all of them are very pleasant in getting the answer that you need. So don't be afraid from that standpoint. It does help to have a little bit of knowledge as to which bus you're looking for, and then you can just confirm it with the bus driver.
Do they have subways?
Well, the trains are both above ground and below ground. So yes, the L, and I'm going to talk about that in the next slide, what the L means and what it does. So yeah, the L, or the public transportation, is below ground and above ground, both, depending on what part of the town or the city that they're in. So that's what the L is. Now I'll go into more detail on that in the next slide. And if you do want to take the public transportation, the CTA, I would strongly encourage you to consider getting a pass. So as you can see, there's a 1-day pass a 3-day pass or a 7-day pass, and there are the prices. So remember that basically each trip is about $250. Some of them are $225 if you're getting on the bus, but that's for each direction. So the passes, if you're taking more than 2 trips in a day, even the 1-day pass makes sense. And obviously, all you need to do is take 4 trips in 3 days for it to be worthwhile. So if you are going to take public transportation, I would consider getting the pass. Now, these passes can be bought basically at the train or L stations, only you can't buy them when you're on a bus. You can use them on the bus, but you can't physically buy it. You can't walk onto a bus and buy one of these passes. Once you get on the bus, you have to pay the fare to move you. You have to pay cash or have one of these cards. So the best thing to do, if you're going to do it, you can also buy this at the airport. So if you're going to take a lot of public transportation, the best thing to do is consider buying one of these passes right at the airport when you're there. Ride shares are pretty easy to get in Chicago. I imagine it's a lot like Philadelphia. There's lots of them. So they're pretty easy to get. And taxis, there are no taxi stands in Chicago. So you just ask for a taxi, you just wave your hand if you see a taxi with no fare in it, and they'll pull over and pick you up. You don't have to go to a specific place to get a taxi. So just some of the things about that. And then the final thing is you would probably fly here from Philadelphia, but if you do drive your own car here, the overnight parking in the hotels is relatively expensive. It's usually between $50 and $75 a night to park your own personal car at a hotel down in the tourist area. So just be aware of that extra cost if indeed you're going to be doing that. A friend of mine was just here this past weekend, and they paid $58 a night for their overnight parking. They had driven here. And so that's what the charge was at their hotel. So all that makes sense. All right. Well, let me see. I promise you we talk about public transportation more, and I'll go back versus the hotels. So basically, when you hear somebody talk about the L, it's not the letter L. It's really EL. We just pronounce it L, and that really stands for elevated. So way back in the late 1890s, this was built. So here down below is a picture. So in a 35 block area of the old, more historic part of downtown, it's circled. It's encircled by the L. This is what the L looks like in this area. It's above ground. So I will show you. So here's a picture map of what I would call the main tourist area of Chicago. And then this red area, this is actually where the loop runs. So you can see the Chicago River. And I said it's about a 2-mile stretch. It's about a mile north of the Chicago River and about a mile south of the Chicago River is what I would call the main tourist area. So just south of the river, in this block area is where the L